It's January 27th, 2002, at 7 PM for the planning board. Under general business, we have the minutes from January 6th, 2020. Should be it says 19 here.
Oops, sorry.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
You abstain. One. Bill?
I abstain.
Abstain, okay, good. Any filings?
And while we're on that, Bob, excuse me, Mr. Chair, so I'm out and we'll let Kyle and
It's up to you. Bob, who do you want filling in for Miriam tonight?
I'll take the second seat if that's fine.
All right, so Kyle's in
Kyle's in, okay.
for Miriam. We did get Miriam's resignation today, but we will schedule discussion on that for the next meeting, and decide who will recommend to fill her spot until the next appointment election period, okay? So think about that between now and next meeting.
And I heard about the resignation, so I went to her house, and I tried real hard, because she has been an asset, but her health is just got lots of hands. It's hard,
It's complicated.
and she doesn't want to be on the board and not be 100% available. So it's not for any good reason other than the fact that she has to take care of other business to attend to.
Needs to put herself first.
So I took the acceptance. And good thing we have all these extra people hanging around. Good to have extras. We have a Plan A form revised for.
All right, so that's the Form A plan. It's just a revision of one you've seen several times. So this is the corner of Central Turnpike and Lincoln Road. They just made some adjustments to Lot 1 and Lot 2. You can see there's this new little leg that'll run in to potentially provide some access to Parcel A in the future. They're just thinking about future usability of that backland and Parcel B as well. So it's just revisions to that. And I did have some comments on the checklist, and they were all addressed.
I need a minute to catch up, so hold on. For Central Turnpike,
Central Turnpike and Lincoln Road, really Lincoln Road, I mean, there's most of this frontage.
Review the book. Did you put on here this thing?
I don't know, cause I think.
why can't I find it? Right.
What was changed on this plan?
They just made it mainly adjustments to Lot 1. That little leg was part of Lot 1, the farthest north. So they created this kind of little leg to give access back into Parcel A, because they're considering some reconfigurations to make that buildable. So then they had to shift Lot A over a little bit. And so Lot 1 and Lot 2 and the line between Lot 2 and Lot 3 are changed. So they did this. They just kind of scooted. So, but other than that, you still have only 2 buildable lots right now and 2 non-buildable lots. So they're just doing some.
We're talking about 2 lots here.
2 lots, same 2 lots you signed before, they're just in a slightly different position because they're trying to do some future planning for access to those non-buildable parcels.
Yeah, the property that's in the back, might be built, it doesn't say not to be built on anyway.
It does, it says, or it did, sorry. The remaining oh my gosh, you're right, it was on there.
For Parcel
It's
A?
Parcel A, not buildable.
Non-buildable, oh, it does say it, yep, Parcel A non-buildable. It just doesn't have the big declaration, the not to be, blah, blah, blah. It just says non-buildable, and it's, when they're labeled parcel instead of lot, that's the indication too.
And this is the one that I tip up on once in a while, so that means if someone will never come forward someday.
Not never, no. Right now, as this plan is signed by you, and
Okay.
when this gets recorded, that parcel, parcel A and parcel B in this case, will both be considered non-buildable. They can come back with a common driveway, or adding land from a neighbor, or something else, but right this minute, it's not a buildable lot as you sign it. And they do that a lot of the times because they've got a buyer maybe for lot 1 or lot 2, but they don't have time to make the parcels buildable right this minute. They're still working on getting those buildable, but they need to get the other ones signed so they can transfer them. So, yeah. So when it just says a non-buildable lot, yes, it can be made buildable. It's only the retreat lots that aren't supposed to be, but there's certain conditions where those can be revised.
Okay.
Okay.
'Cause in the past, I've been tripped up.
Mhm.
And someone says not to be buildable, and they're building on it. I wonder what.
Yeah. It would have to come back in, be labeled a lot, and then the checklist would have to show it has the adequate frontage, the adequate acreage, the compliant upland, all of which right this minute, those two parcels don't have.
And there are no house on lot 1 or lot 2 right now.
No, everything, you can see the dotted lines where the house and the
Okay.
barn used to be, those have been raised.
They could be there, great, okay, yeah. And maybe that's what happens, is then people buy this house and think no one's gonna be building behind them, and then all of a sudden, this house is going back, and they think that
Mhm.
they didn't quite understand that there is no house back there right now,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean there could be one.
Certain can be in the
Someday,
future,
yes.
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So we need to,
Just a motion to endorse the Form A dated 1/22/20.
Make a motion to endorse the Form A plan dated 1/22/20.
okay,
I'll second it.
thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It looks like we get everyone.
All right.
219 Wittens Drive, Wendell, security reduction.
All right, as you know, we had $43,000 held on the Windles 219 Whitens Road. The site is complete, other than that pond cleaning that I talked to you about, and Graves had written you a report on. Graves has stated that $3,000 is all that needs to be held for that. And that giving them through spring wet season till June 1st of this year to get that done is reasonable. So, that is the request to reduce the lender's agreement down to $3,000 and to put a completion date on that basin cleaning, to June 1st, 2020.
Okay?
You've got several things here, so that needs a motion if you choose to do that.
Yep,
These
we
are all the
should do
things
that.
that need to be signed.
Okay. So we'll need a motion to reduce the surety from someone to $3,000.
To $3,000.
It's gonna be now to $3,000. So
I'll make a motion to reduce the surety to $3,000 on 219 Whitens Road.
No, yes, on 219 Whitens Road, but can you also do the performance date to June 1st?
And set the performance date to June 1st.
Excellent.
The pond is gonna be clean
By June 1st.
not get clean then, it's gonna be before then.
Yep.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, call for vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, thank you, that's unanimous. And then we have to,
And he did have he wanted your opinion on what does it say there?
it's a roofer,
yeah,
roofing
tenant.
contractor.
Yeah, roofing contractor. They own, I gave you guys the information, it was on the extra stuff sitting there.
Yeah.
The roofing contractor, they do primarily metal roofing. They do some, they do,
Standing seam
they
metal.
do some asphalt, but mostly metal standing seam. He's a building contractor, it was one of the special permits he got. So you just need to decide if a site plan waiver with the information of them coming in with the information about their specific business is okay, or if you're gonna make them go through an additional public hearing. As you know, he went through the public hearing on the building and to get the special permits for the uses. So now it's just you coming in on an agenda, or do you want something more out of it?
I would say we don't need a public hearing for that. They can come in and talk to us, should be fine.
Yeah, I would concur with that, depending on, you know, how many trucks he has, because
Mhm.
parcel's built out.
Mhm.
But if he has, you know, 50 trucks, I'm just saying, 50 trucks
So
and
you need the
30
details.
trucks a day.
Yeah.
That's an issue, but, you know, half dozen trucks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they come in and give us the
Details.
game plan for this particular business would be appropriate.
I'd appreciate, it would make, I'm assuming this is a contractor who has an office where he can bill people and meet people, but I don't expect there's gonna be any roofing supplies.
Oh,
Here,
yeah.
there's not,
Absolutely.
all that stuff, that you.
That's actually gonna be stored here. That's what these ones were designed for. Whether he'll have a whole fleet of vehicles or not,
Right.
we need to know that.
Yeah, so,
But all the materials would definitely be stored here. I shouldn't say all of them, because a lot of them are ordered to job, you know, especially standing seam. You don't keep every color of every kind of roof. A lot of those are ordered into the job site. But he would be keeping all the standard supplies in that building. That's what these buildings were designed for, really. So, and they're also designed to have a little office in each unit too.
You said they fabricate there, or they don't fabricate there?
Well, the standing seam metal is usually ordered in sections to a job site, and then they put it in place on site.
Okay.
But they probably will not store large quantities of red standing seam and black standing seam and greens, because every job's gonna want their own. You can't really anticipate what somebody's gonna order in, but there'll be standard materials like the adhesive or attachment materials that you put down every standing seam roof with, the underlayment that you do on every roof. All of that, I'm sure, will be stored in this building, so that the only thing they're ordering specialty is whatever roof is going on to a
so
site.
for myself, we wanna be pro-business, but we wanna have, real clear instructions as to what kind of roofing business is gonna be taken at this place, for the sake of all the neighbors that are on the property there. And I wanna be real clear on that, and then have anything else, on the agenda that I'm not familiar with that should be going on.
Okay.
So come in.
Yeah, I would agree with the same thoughts. I mean, the activity is what would count, you know.
Yep.
Not just the storage, but how much activity coming and going would be what we wanna hear, more detail, yeah.
On storage and activity.
Yeah, same as mine.
Right. So I'll put that specific business on a future agenda and tell them they need to have all of the details on what's gonna be stored there, how many employees, the kind of trips in and out, for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have, to endorse the LaPlante Way modification.
Yeah, so you guys approved that LaPlante Way's definitive subdivision modification. So you just need, it's gone through the appeal period with no appeals. So now you just need a motion to endorse the plan. The latest revision date is December 18th, 2019, and then you just need to sign it.
We've already had the motion and everything, we
No,
just signed?
no, motion, we do need the motion.
Accept this plan dated, 11/04/19.
And that's with a most recent revision date of December 18, 2019.
Yes, that's right, yes,
Mhm.
correct.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Now, that one is, on the Form A, I only need Bob's signature, but on the one you have, I need the majority of the board members to sign that. And while you're accomplishing that, if you want, I'll start going through the correspondence.
We can do this after. We can do them all at the end.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Get everybody home tonight. We can see how good we are. Okay by the hour. Now we have a correspondence from Pi Earth Removal.
Yeah, pine earth removal, you'll recall you asked them to put in some new monitoring wells. And so you have the plan showing the new monitoring wells that they installed at your request. So I just wanted to make sure you saw that plan and that those wells have been installed. The next piece of, no, I did it. The next piece of correspondence is an article about New England Disposal Technologies from the Worcester Business Journal. As you know, they're on Lot 9 within the Commerce Park, so I thought it was kind of cool that one of our local businesses is covered in there. That's Mike Robertson, the owner. I told you I was gonna bombard you with this stuff as I catch up on reading. This is a 158 unit development in Framingham. I just included that because that's a lot of units and it's got a really great design. So I wanted you to be able to kind of look at that design and maybe go to their website and you can see how it's been designed nicely to look like kind of farm-like and they're doing a really good job in dealing with massing for quite a few units. And then this one was very interesting, this article on staying active. This talks about over 55 developments in Central Mass and says per their research, there are over 2,000 over 55 units currently recently approved or in the building process in Central Mass, including one development in Westboro that has 700 units. So this is a really interesting story on over 55s. And then I gave you the Wedgewood Farm dismissal, so you can see the court record on that and that's been dismissed. And then on your sheet tonight was the Conservation Commission is gonna be reviewing their bylaws and buffer areas to ORAs or upland resource areas from Great Ponds in particular, and they just wanted to let you know about that meeting in case you were, they asked that I let you know about that meeting in case you wanted to attend or were interested in watching it. So that is all of correspondence.
Okay. 7:15, we have a planning hearing for Snow Road.
Did you read that notice?
We're doing pretty good. Wanna read that on an easel?
There's one right there, yeah.
Or a ledge, is that one too?
Sure.
I can have someone read
Yep.
read that for me?
Yep.
You got it, Mike, you're on.
Sutton Planning Board Public Hearing Notice, in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 4188L of Mass General Law, the Planning Board will hold a public hearing on the application of Bellavacqua Homes LLC, 1 Charles Road, Hopedale, Mass, relative to construction of Snow Road adjacent to land owned by the applicant at 2 Lead Street and 4 Snow Road. The hearing is scheduled for January 27, 2020 at 7:15 p.m.
Okay. Thanks, for everyone that's here, cause people come to this all the time. So everyone knows how it works, we're the town plan. They elect us to do what's best for the town, it's always what we're thinking about. We have a board, whose names are in front here. There's someone that's gonna make a presentation, and anyone that's here, that's, here and interested, you'll get a chance to speak out. Basically, we ask him to talk about the proposal, and then the tradition is to let any board member see what they think about what's going on. If they have any comments, he can react, and then people who are here can also say what you think. And we have Jen here who works for you. She knows all the rules and regulations, so when we try to do something that we can't do, she lets us know, because we don't know it. And you can be asking questions that are inappropriate and say, but it doesn't make sense. She should be able to explain why he can do the things that are going on there. So that's how the process is. And we try to 7:15, we gave it 15 minutes, let's see how good we are. All right, because there is an agenda. Go ahead, welcome.
These will pick you up.
Okay, yeah, this doesn't appear to be working.
It doesn't broadcast you out. It doesn't, it's
It
not,
picks up for
doesn't
the
project you, it
recording. Oh,
just
I
picks
see.
it up for the recording.
I see.
Whole world is watching.
Good evening to the board members. My name is Michael Dryden. I'm a senior project manager with Allen Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the owner applicant, Bevel Aqua Homes. This is a very unique definitive subdivision, I think, to say the least. You would agree? The purpose here is, it's up on the screen, and I have a board here as well, that I can point to. Might be helpful. The sole purpose of us filing a definitive subdivision is essentially to enable us to be issued, or our client to be issued, a building permit for map 49, lot 9-8. And so what we have here is Snow Street has been established, as I understand it, in the 1937 town meeting. And it was established as a public way, although there might be some additional discussion that we need to get to on public versus private. But the initial portion of Snow Street where it intersects with Ledge Street is improved. This last section of about 175 feet, sorry, can you see that? This last section was never improved. I won't get into all the minutiae and all the history, but there is record documentation to suggest that that right-of-way has been established. And so it was the recommendation of town council, the mechanism being a definitive subdivision, and I actually agree with that. I've been through this exact process in the town of Charlton a few years ago. The only really mechanism to allow or to permit those improvements is through a definitive subdivision. We have a very narrow right-of-way, it's 20 feet, very substandard. Usually, as you know, they're 50 or 60 feet. So what we have proposed in terms of improvements to that roadway, on the next sheet, I know this is on the screen, this will allow me to point to some things as I go. So we have proposed within that 20-foot wide right-of-way, 18 feet of pavement, so a foot on either side, a little bit of tolerance, if you will. And by the way, I failed to mention this, but the owner applicant, Bevel Aqua Homes, actually owns both of the lots on both sides of this roadway, and that is important as we get into things like waiver requests. So again, 18 feet of pavement, it's a cross pitch, and we've provided a typical roadway cross section here. Obviously differs from your standard cross section, we'll get to that on the waivers list. We're proposing to maintain existing grade. As I mentioned, we have a 20-foot right-of-way, 18 feet of pavement, there's only a foot on either side, so we don't really have the ability to elevate or cut, because we wouldn't be able to make up that grade within the right-of-way. So fortunately, in this case, the grade is very favorable. It's flat, it's roughly 2% as it is. There's a low point in this general vicinity. So what we have done is added some grades per some comments that we received, and I can go through those as well. Essentially, again, we're just holding the existing grade, hogging out topsoil and subsoil, bringing in gravel base, and paving such that we match existing grade. It's really that simple. And the length that we propose is 145 feet, and then the last 30 feet is compacted gravel for snow storage, so snow can simply be pushed right to the end of the right-of-way. That 145 feet is significant because road dead ends greater than 150 feet require a turnaround in the form of a standard bulb or a hammerhead. So we propose 145 feet, which is more than adequate to serve as access to this one lot. And then we don't have to go through all the impact and additional work to create a turnaround or a cul-de-sac. It just doesn't seem commensurate with the goal for this project. It's really that simple. Now, of course, this is a definitive subdivision, and there's a pretty sizable departure between your typical roadway cross-section for a 50-foot right-of-way. So we've provided a lengthy list of waivers. That's just part of the process in this case. And I can go through each and every one of those waivers if you like. I'll leave it to the board, whatever your pleasure may be. And by the way, we did initially submit And we did receive numerous comments from Jennifer as well as town officials. And just today, we received those comments, the last of which on Friday. So I did send over to Jennifer revised plans, and I do have some copies of those plans at 11 by 17, if it would be okay if I could pass those out.
We do have copies, but they're small. They're smaller than that, so that'd
Okay.
probably be
And-
helpful.
If that's helpful. And again, this just incorporates the comments that were received.
Thank you.
Always pass them out. So Jen, we definitively got the answer from town council that,
Well,
we heard about this
a while ago.
a long time ago.
Yeah, so
months ago.
I mean, the issue of what's public, what's private hasn't been entirely settled, but what council said is basically, if it's public definitively, you really just need the selectmen to vote to let them upgrade it and upgrade it like this.
So,
But because that's not entirely settled, the alternative path is a definitive subdivision approval. So that's what you'll have here. So we can go through the process, establish this however makes sense with the appropriate waivers. And then we need to pin down whether it's road or street with the selectmen. We'll have the selectmen vote that, and it'll probably end up street by most of the legal records. And we'll have the discussion at that time with the Board of Selectmen in terms of future maintenance and the like, so.
so a little history then. Was the 20-foot section the right of way, or the 20-foot road width, was that the standard in 1937?
Well,
When this happened?
1937 might have, was when you had an official road acceptance vote, but it's not entirely clear if the entire length of this was accepted or only a portion of it or whatever. What kind of prevails is there's the subdivision plan from 1920, I think that was?
27.
Yeah, it was the
Maybe.
layout of the village subdivision plan, basically, where this right-of-way is as you see it on that second page, right there. That's the layout for the subdivision plan for the layout of the, kind of all the village roadways. And then the road was accepted in 37, and the vote was a little weird, the distance was a little weird, and, to say the least. And, so.
Was 20 feet the standard?
20 feet was, yeah, not unusual, yes, and not unusual a long time ago I mean, 'cause,
What's that?
Who's just built?
yeah, I mean, when you think what was on,
What's a rod? What's a 2-rod? What's a rod?
2 rod is 33 feet, 16.5 is 1 rod, so, and you've seen a bunch of 2-rod
Right,
roads.
right. I thought that would be was the minimum of 2
No.
rod, because then,
Not in the village, not if you look at the, roadways and the subdivision plan for the original village.
Yeah,
They're
and
all pretty
obviously,
narrow.
like today, you don't have standards to follow, so I think it was whatever people generally accepted.
And what you used, really, on the roadways, which wasn't a whole hell of a lot of huge vehicles, you know?
Never saw it a week ago.
All
So,
right, I got-
yeah.
while I'm rolling here, I just have one question.
Mhm.
So what happens if the subdivision gets continued to that next parcel? What could possibly, if we accept this at 20 feet, then what happens?
Well, I think you still have an issue with, that 20 feet isn't legal frontage for the abutting parcel. 20 feet is not legal buildable frontage for a buildable parcel. They'd have to get legal frontage somewhere else for that parcel behind them, because they still need a legal stretch of frontage. By a vote
But
of
I'm
the.
saying if they're gonna put a road in,
That would be difficult at best, because they're coming onto a 20-foot right-of-way.
that's my point.
Yeah, maybe you get I don't even think you get a house, because you only have 20 feet of frontage right now on the adjoining.
Right now.
Right, so that's not,
Well,
I
you
mean,
could
it's
create a road.
pre-existing non-conforming, you could potentially do no, you can't, because a road requires a 50-foot right-of-way, so you'd have to go from 20 and then go out to 50.
Right.
And then you'd have to prove that all works with traffic and stuff,
Well,
so, no,
that's-
it's a cluster to say the least. They'd
But I
have to
could see
do-
someone saying, hey, this is a approved subdivision.
Mhm.
Why can't we just extend this?
Yeah, well, because you have to show that the traffic works, so you'd have to do the traffic studies
Have to
and
make a
things
lot of
like that.
improvements to do that.
Yeah. You know,
Which
they,
you certainly don't have the real estate to do, you can't do sidewalks.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no,
I
it's
don't want
great.
someone to tell me,
It's great.
10,
Anybody
15
can
years
file
from
for
now.
anything, but in that case, you'd have to have traffic studies and everything else to show that it works. To show that it works and it's not dangerous and blah, blah, blah. So you certainly could, if there's frontage elsewhere for that parcel, and that serves as a main entrance or legal access, you could do what you've done on other things, which is, you know, if it makes sense to come in this way as well, or instead, you could potentially vote in open meeting, that could be alternative access. But again, even that, you've got a section of gravel there, that would have to be upgraded, because that section of gravel is not, you know, that's not a roadway really, so that would have to be upgraded even for that.
Just says not a roadway, but if we, the 20-foot section with the gravel, you're saying.
The 45 feet. It's in the roadway right-of-way, but it's not really
Okay.
built as a travelable surface. It can support weight, because it is still 12-inch compacted gravel, but.
correct. The person that owns the property at the end, after the gravel,
It's right there.
oh, is not the owner of this piece of property?
That is correct.
No,
Not, okay, all right. So,
Okay.
so that means that, I don't want, if they owned everything, they'd create a hardship for themselves. But they can't create a hardship for themselves, they're not,
well, they're not really creating anything. It exists.
right,
That right-of-way exists.
right, that exists, that's, I just wanna make sure that exists, is still
Period.
there.
It exists, even if this application wasn't before the board. The LaForces, who own the abutting property, could come in tomorrow. Even if this application was, they could come in tomorrow and say, hey, there's a roadway right-of-way there. We wanna use it to do something with our land. So this isn't, all this does is it gets some pavement down on there. There's still the exact same, whatever the legal situation is now with whether they can use it or not use it, still the same thing tomorrow. They've just got one less step because there's pavement on this after this. So you're not changing whether they have legal rights to it, whether they can use it or not. Nothing changes that. Unless we definitively determine that that section is a public way, then it gets a little more usable, but not substantially.
It's Mike, right?
Yes.
You're doing a great job, by the way. Well, I think. And, are there any other questions from other board members?
One of the notes we got here from the different town departments said there was some tax money owed. Has that been paid?
All settled.
Okay.
Well, that was a mad scramble today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
To get
well,
that
yeah, you had some ownership name changes and some, yeah, it was weird, but it all got settled.
Okay.
We
Thank
can't
you.
be here.
You show that as a drainage easement across the property,
That's an existing drainage easement by record.
and on our map that I'm looking at, this mobile pipeline comes right through this property.
No.
No pipe?
That's more on our land.
Yeah, I believe that's to the east.
May I?
Yeah.
There's a culvert.
Just make, so we have your name.
Right here, and that's right away for that. It drops off into my hayfield, above my hayfield. And it's just a town drain culvert.
For all the people that are watching from him, your name and your address,
Oh,
please.
Dennis LaForce,
Thank you, Dennis.
27 Whitens Road.
Thank you.
Dennis.
You better keep track of who's talking.
The one in Dennis.
That's why he said it that way.
So that pipe,
No, this isn't right then.
There's a one in Dennis.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna wait for the
Yeah.
okay, so your answer?
One thing's wrong, probably that.
That's what's wrong, okay.
The map's probably wrong. Alright.
This map or what you're looking at?
What I'm looking at.
Well, his
The
stamp's
official,
on this
zoning
map, so there better not be a tentacle line on it that doesn't show.
I would be
so-
very shocked if there's, that is on this property.
Yeah, 'cause it goes right through the house almost, so.
About that drainage
Any
easement,
questions from any of the board members?
it's just a standard drainage pipe running out of the catch basin.
Exactly, yep, it leaves this catch basin right here, and as Dennis stated, there's an outlet, to the south of the property.
Any clue how low the pipe is from looking in the catch basin?
Based on the invert, it's actually fairly deep here, it's about, almost 8.5 feet there, so, and it is very flat in here, so
So you're not worried about damaging it or disturbing it during your construction?
we'll certainly have to be cognizant of that.
So I just, if you know, just wanna, there's an existing home there,
There's an existing
And you're
home on this
looking,
lot.
yep, and you're looking to maybe put 2 houses?
No,
No.
just one.
Just this lot.
Just on that, okay, not the
Correct.
other, okay.
My client owns both of the lots, this
Yep.
one already has a dwelling.
Yep.
So, again, the sole reason we're here is so that if these improvements are approved by the board, a building permit can be issued for that final.
Legal frontage.
But you folks own that property beyond that?
Yes.
Everything to the right.
That's theirs.
Okay. And you're here in support of this, or not? I mean, I'm just
wanna
not
know what's
sure.
going on.
I have no problem.
that's all.
Okay, I'm just,
We have a right of way. You just said that somebody would have to have a certain amount of frontage. It's one lot. There's a certain amount of frontage that we own on Whitens Road, so that would be the legal frontage. So if we use the Whitens Road as frontage, I suppose we could put a house back there because we have the legal frontage.
You'd have to talk to the building
We-
department about that,
Yeah,
and
but-
they would have to make a ruling in open meetings. It could be dicey,
To tell you
so.
the truth, we have no plans really of putting anything back there. I've used that to bring firewood out from the back because I cut firewood in the back, but I don't wanna lose my right of way to that. I don't want somebody to say, you can't use that because, now the other issues with where I'd have to do to make it a lot for a house in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't change the
It
status.
doesn't change it, it's just, you know, I'd still have to
You still
jump
can
hoops to
pass-
do that.
pass on to your
But I don't
property.
wanna lose my ability to
Right.
do that.
Mm-mm.
Certainly nothing that we're proposing that would
No,
do
I
that
don't see
would-
anything,
would
that's,
prevent that.
you're not putting stone walls, you're not putting a house in the middle of the lot, you're not
Yeah.
doing anything that would keep me from, and again, you may see my tractor come through there once in a while.
Except that there's a pile of snow.
Yeah, except there'll be a big pile of
Yeah, the
snow.
stones at the end won't slow down my tractor.
If at some point a house went
Any other
in there
questions from board
with
members?
all the things,
I'm
the
all
rest of
set.
that road would
Hear
have
any-
to be.
any other
also-
questions from the
But
public?
then we would have to put pipes underneath that road for sewer and,
Yeah, if we did, but,
sewer and water.
yeah, but that's,
Cause not running them up from Whitens Road, that's ridiculous.
that's something we bring up with Jen sometime in the future, we have no plans for a house back there.
Any other questions from the public?
Good, for now? Okay. We have a bunch of departmental comments.
And we can,
Find them.
okay, taxes are done, thank you, that's important to keep us moving here, thank you, good job.
So fire department has no comment at this time. I know they had one in the past about length of the road, so
Yeah,
I have to
yeah,
check to get
so
that. I
that's-
assume that's all.
That plan has been revised in accordance with the
Okay.
original fire department commentary.
Highway, I'm assuming no comment. He didn't write no comment, but he wrote nothing, so I'm gonna say no comment.
He will have more comments at, when we need to go to the selectmen in terms of the status and who's gonna maintain it, but.
Conservation Committee, 114, with Mike McGovern, good to go, need notification if development is ever proposed on adjacent lot
Yeah.
or land. Board of Health, town sewer, town water, no issues.
We have a letter from Nick Nunemacher. The comments in this proposed subdivision are that Stone Street appears on the November 14th, 1940 list of chapter 9 roads with a length of .06 miles. The actual width and length of the public way as accepted have not yet been qualified.
Quantified, yeah. He's right. We need to settle.
What does it mean?
Well, we need to settle what portion's public, what portion's private, and, as he noted, chapter 90, the length that the state pays us money for is like 316 feet, which goes through that intersection and partway up the new pavement.
Correct.
But not to the end. So, it's an anomaly how we got to that number. Who knows? We've been being paid for maintenance of that for quite some time now.
Thank you, your name?
I'm very sorry because I just
No,
came
no.
up with this question and I know
Yep,
I'm behind
yep,
the eight
what's your
ball,
name,
but,
please?
My name's Anna Grotebaum. We live
We're
at
glad
two-
you're here.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right.
We live at 2.5 Ledge Street. The purpose of this little extension is just to put one house on that lot?
That's correct.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, okay. And it's going right next to the existing house that's there?
Yes. If my client had his way, he wouldn't do this at all. He would just have a driveway that connected at this corner.
He can't.
But he can't.
Thank you, came.
go through all
That
this
was my
effort,
whole
right?
That's what we do. It's so good.
Easy.
Okay, so back to Nick's concern.
Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, that just,
What do we need to do, Nick? He happens to be here. How does it work?
When the town accepts a public way,
mhm,
you're supposed to describe the length, the width, and the dimensions of the road. In this particular case, the only thing that the actual vote at the town meeting was, see the records of the town clerk, or the board of selectmen, I forgot exactly which one,
mhm.
and I have no idea where those are. And I don't think anybody else has any idea where they are, or even if they exist. In my mind, that makes it a defective acceptance. Be that as may, it's been used as the public for a long time, a portion of it. I don't know how you fix it, that's a legal question.
Is that true for all of Snow Road or just this little piece of it?
It says to accept Snow Road, and
The whole road.
it doesn't say anything else. It doesn't say the length, it doesn't say the width. Presumably, it's as
you-
it's shown on, as he has shown it, is.
And there's other people living on the other part of Snow Road.
Absolutely. As a result of sort of putting all the math together for all the surrounding lots and land, what you're left with is this layout.
Yeah, and that layout is what's shown on a recorded subdivision plan from very early on.
Right.
There's no address directly on Snow Road, this would be.
That would be the
only
first address, yes,
right.
the only address on
It's
Snow
on
Road.
slides of-
On Snow Street, most likely, from
So
all the
Snow Street.
records we're finding.
Snow Street.
So,
Mhm.
so we have to determine something. Do we determine that? Or
No.
does the town do? Who decides that?
No, we're just going to review this, whether
Yeah,
it's
let us
public,
know.
as you know, whether it's public or private, it's the same subdivision standard.
Right.
The public or private only comes into play in terms of future maintenance. So that needs to be settled, and the selectmen that'll fall back to
So
the
we'll
selectmen.
pass that to the
Yes.
selectmen. Okay.
Yeah, they need to vote the right name as well,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we'll talk about the maintenance of it, and that'll,
Right. Yeah, the other note, the other comment was that the ending of the way name, street versus road,
Mhm.
should be resolved, and the selectmen will decide that.
Mhm.
The owner names on lot, map 49, parcel 105 is missing?
They're on there
Yeah,
now.
it's been added.
They're on there
Okay.
now.
We've addressed his comments to the extent that we can. Yep.
Okay, and the owner names in the map and parcel are incorrect for the land owned by LaFrosse.
Yeah, that's been corrected as
That's
well.
been corrected?
Yep.
All the lot corners for the lot should be set per the subdivision regulations.
Mhm.
And on the west side of the lot, what is the rectangle and the line running southerly from it?
yeah, whose shed is that?
It's
Right. Is that
this property.
When what?
It's associated with this property.
And the fence too?
It's
Oh, okay.
presumably
So the shed is.
Not on their property.
correct.
There's a part of it. Maybe it's already the other part of the
Yeah,
shed.
share it.
A door on each side.
Doors on each side.
You share it.
Okay,
Is that an issue? Depend.
well, the lot line exists. I mean, these aren't new lot lines.
Right. I won't speak for my client. At some point, that will have to be
Right.
addressed.
The shed had doors on each side?
Could just
Start
let
sharing
them
it.
show.
That's
Okay,
funny.
not our stuff. And
Probably
Snow
just-
Street may provide
Probably doesn't
access to
know.
land of LaFrosse and possible housing development on the 20 acres.
Yeah, and we've already talked about
We
that.
talked about that.
It's a
Okay.
legal issue as well.
Okay, comments?
Oakley dokley.
How
And
about,
my
how about,
comments,
what is the square feet of the lot that we're talking about,
pre-existing non-conforming, actually, I think it is conforming,
It's
other than the
20,000,
frontage.
just above 20,000 square feet.
So it's-
oh, okay.
so it's, yeah, it just lacks the frontage, thus this subdivision plan, to give it
I'm not sure if
safe.
it's,
So, did you say it's pre-existing non-conforming?
Well, I think the size is actually conforming, cause we're in the village here.
In the village district is 20?
So it lacks the frontage right now, which is why this plan's been filed.
would it be helpful for the board to see this record plan that we've been talking about?
Sure.
I only have one copy, but if you want to.
Yeah, they have it in their electronic files from
You can
past
see it.
discussions, but
It's basically what we're reflecting on the plan.
And what is in the village district, 20,000?
it is 20,000.
I mean, if they had if it was bigger, you could ask them to expand that road to regular subdivision rules and regulations, and take it away from their own lot. You could.
You don't want to be a big road there. It's,
Right.
you know.
Technically, but
You'd
that
have
would,
the 20, as you described earlier, you'd have 20 feet here and then flared just along the front.
I don't think you'd want that appeal. Try to justify that appeal. Everything around here is a 20-foot right of way, but this one lot needs 50 or 40. That would not work well, but yes, you could.
Any more questions from the public? If the board's, your decision, you can make a motion to act.
Well, we have waivers that we need to consider. So, in the least, you should decide if you wanna go through all the waivers and then decide if you wanna act on this or not act on this. I did give you minimum conditions should you want to act on it, but we should definitely at least go through the waiver requests. So you have a revised list dated January 23rd.
24.
Oh, I'm still looking at
Revised
the,
waivers, 24th.
I'm
That's
looking at
the
the
one he
old
handed
one.
us.
Here we go.
No.
There's the, no, that's still the old one.
Is that this?
We have a list
That's
of
the
up
new
to 13 total waivers. Actually 19, on the page, 19.
I'm gonna put mine side by side, so we'll make sure we don't forget any. Okay. Alright. There we go, okay. So, go ahead, Michael, so you can start down the list.
Okay, waiver number one, fairly significant fee for a definitive subdivision. Again, based on the simplistic nature here, we're asking to waive that and reduce that overall fee just to the 200 per lot for this one lot that we're talking about this evening.
They did submit the 200, I told them they had to request a waiver for the rest, so.
Should I just go right through these, or
No, one by
we'll
one.
vote on these all
So
at
the
once?
has the town incurred any expenses on this review or anything?
Well,
like that?
obviously, you have the review letters, so that was just staff reviewing during their workdays and Nick reviewing during his time when he's in. So, no, Graves Engineering did not review the set of plans, there's no drainage calcs or anything, so.
What about the council, town council?
Town council, those questions were answered previously. We had the opportunity at that time to require them to pay those expenses. The administrator chose at the time not to have those paid because it kind of spoke to a lot of existing issues in old villages like this and kind of how we should handle things. You certainly could, you know, do a motion to waive the 3,000, but if any additional fees are incurred, that they pay those.
Which is more than reasonable, of course.
Do we wanna make a motion on that to waive the fee unless any additional fees are incurred by the town?
Need a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That's good.
And I know we have 19 of these, so I'm gonna move very quickly. Slow down. So, number two, again, we just mentioned drainage calculations, when we have asked for a waiver from that. Again, the comparison that I make here is, under the Mass DEP stormwater management regs, 4 lots or less do not require stormwater management calculations. We're talking about a driveway that serves access to 1 lot. There's no wetland issues here, so we don't fall under the Wetlands Protection Act, either. So that's the basis of that.
Make a motion to waive drainage calculation requirement.
I'll second that.
Just because we have a guy in the neighborhood that has a tractor. No surprises? Okay, thank you. He knows what's going on. Getting to his woodlot. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Next page, number 3, permanent benchmarks. We did not set permanent benchmarks. We can certainly do that at the time of construction of this home, but again, given the nature of this plan, we're just asking for a waiver from the 3 permanent benchmarks.
My only concern is that when you're doing your construction of the roadway, that you're certain you're within those right-of-way bounds. So how are you gonna do that?
So benchmark usually is elevation driven? or
Okay.
Is
So-
that your concern, or your
No,
concern is
well,
horizontally?
No, my concern is more where you are on the ground.
Yeah. What we
So,
plan to do.
how are you doing that?
So we do have monuments at the end, and
Those
our surveyors
exist?
will set these 2 monuments.
Okay.
So we'll be able to, essentially lay this out in the field.
So the ones on the end are there?
Yes,
Okay.
these exist.
Those
And
are there,
On the, definitive plan, you'll note that we're proposing to set.
right, for the assessor's
corners.
comments?
Yep.
Yep, all right, so I'm not worried about this, I'm just worried about here.
Make a motion to grant the waiver for permanent benchmarks.
Second.
Do they serve any purpose for the town? We need to get
The
those going,
monuments
that's
he's
enough.
putting in sound like they serve that purpose.
Well, if he was changing the grade significantly, the benchmarks would be very vital.
And that's the purpose of it, and we're not altering grades at all. We don't have
Yeah.
the ability to, simply.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All done? Number 4?
Number 4, typically for a new subdivision where you're creating new lots, you include the relative error of closure. This is an existing lot, so we're asking for a waiver on that.
Make a motion to grant the waiver for relative error of closure.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Number 5, profiles are typically created for new roadways. Again, we're maintaining existing grade, it's 145 feet of pavement, so it would seem that a profile's really not really gonna serve any purpose. But one of Jennifer's comments was that we weren't showing those grades, we were just, the initial set of plans just had a note that we were maintaining the existing grade. So I took the time to actually show the proposed grades on the revised plans. So, certainly enough information to build that.
I'll make a motion, we waive the profiles on the center lines and sidelines of proposed streets.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All set.
Number 6, roadway cross-section. Your subdivision rules and regs in Appendix A have a typical roadway cross-section. Certainly, this is a vast departure from that for numerous reasons, so we're asking for a waiver from that typical roadway cross-section.
I'll make a motion, we grant the waivers for roadway cross sections.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael.
Now, I'm gonna just comment on that, now that you, so, they've provided cross-sections, but what your waiver is for is that it's different than the one in the appendix, so it's not 26 feet, it doesn't have sidewalks, it doesn't have planting strips, so that's what this waiver is about. So they do exist, the cross-sections are on the plan, they're just not like the ones in the appendix, so.
All set. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained.
Item number 7, the minimum right-of-way width is 50 feet. Clearly, we don't have 50 feet. That's the basis of that waiver.
Well, it's both right-of-way width and pavement width.
Oh, right, excuse me. Yes, so right-of-way is required at 50 feet, pavement at 26 feet. We certainly can't accommodate either one of those. So it's sort of grouped into one waiver.
Is that the same width of pavement then as you go down Snow Street?
Yes, more or less.
Consistent with what's there on the ground now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the waiver for paved width of 18 feet.
Second.
And right-of-way of 20.
Right away of 20.
Need a second?
Scott?
Second.
Space, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Three.
Abstained.
Number 8 is relative to dead-end streets. The regulations require a turnaround. I discussed this a little bit earlier. We're not proposing a turnaround of any type, whether bulb or overhead, and we're at less than 150 feet, so the fire department does not have an issue with that either.
Make a motion, we,
To waive the needed radius of 176 feet at the end of the dead-end street.
second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you.
Number 9, subsurface data. Typically what you do for a new roadway design is you do borings and you look at things like groundwater and presence of ledge and things of that nature. Again, for the simplistic 145 feet, we're not proposing to do subsurface investigation.
Make a motion, we grant the waiver relative to stormwater management. Oh, no, subsurface data.
Second.
Thank you, Wally. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Number 10, we're back to stormwater management, just in a different section of the regulations, same reasoning there. Subsurface drains or subdrain, this is relative to the actual, storm drains. So again, what we're proposing is 8 feet across, pitch of 2%, everything will flow onto this lot, so we don't have a formal drainage system proposed, as you would see in a typical new subdivision.
Make a motion to grant a waiver relative to stormwater management.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
For efficiency, we might be able to do 11 and 12 at the same time. Water and sewer, we're not proposing to extend those utilities. What we're proposing to do is simply connect the services directly to the existing services in this location.
All right, now I'm gonna consult with the water department. Does that sound like an issue?
Is there a pipe there?
Yes, well, the pipe ends right about there.
Correct. We don't have a record plans, we didn't show it, but we know it exists.
Yep.
So this gentleman knows more exactly where it is than I do.
He's everything in the village.
Everything about it.
The sewer.
Sewer will be
Yeah, I don't know anything about the sewer.
within a few feet.
Yes.
Within whatever that.
So you don't anticipate an issue getting from where it ends over into it?
No, I don't.
Okay. So if you trench on the existing roadway, obviously, you're going to have to deal with
A street
the
opening.
highway. Yeah, well, you're gonna
Absolutely.
need a street opening
Yeah,
anyways.
we will have to do that.
So, all right.
And when we
You need to
put
make
together
them
a site
happy from
plan-
the water department and the sewer department as well, in the separation between anything you put in and the highway department if you have to cut into the existing roadway for patching and so.
Correct.
Make a motion, we grant the waiver relative to water and sewer pipe installation.
Second. Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We're getting there. Item number 13, temporary construction easements. As I mentioned earlier, the proponent owns the land on both sides of this. There's really no need to have easements in place, and we're maintaining existing grade. There's no off-grading or any work beyond that right-of-way proposed.
Make a motion to grant a waiver relative to temporary construction easements.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? You got it.
14, on the next page, the board may require a park or park suitably located for playground. Obviously, we don't have
You
ample.
don't need a waiver because that's may, and unless you're requiring one. Are you requiring him to do the word is may as opposed to shall?
Okay.
So unless they jump up and say, you need a park on this one lot subdivision, you don't need that waiver.
Okay. I like to play it safe.
Play is the.
No pun intended.
Number 15, 18 inches of gravel base and 3 inches of pavement is what your subdivision rules and regulations require. We're proposing 12 inches of gravel base and 3 inches of pavement, which is very typical for the amount of use this is going to see for a single-family home. Essentially what you would do for a driveway. It's even more than you would do for a driveway, actually.
I'll make a motion, we grant a waiver for the 18 inches of gravel base.
Thank you,
I'll second it.
thank you.
That's what's existing? What's existing?
We'll have to
Who
bring
knows?
in gravel base, so what you typically do is take away the top and subsoil, get to parent material, compact that, and bring in 12 inches of gravel.
We have no idea what's under the existing snow road.
Well, what if it's sufficient?
What do you mean? Oh, what's there right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they'll be able to tell that because it has to pass the sieve test. It has to be a particular kind of gravel so it compacts properly. So if they go to dig into it and it looks like amazing road gravel,
Yeah.
they
That's
can always
that's
sieve
the
test what's
exception.
in place.
That's
Yeah,
definitely the
rare,
exception.
rare.
It's interesting that when they were putting the sewers, people doing the digging for the sewers were amazed that that was the only part of Manchog that had, gravel instead of some lead streak.
That's
ironic.
Funny. That's pretty funny. Oh, okay, so vote on that one? Mike was the second?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? We're all set.
What?
For number 16.
Might I suggest that 16, 17, and 18 get grouped together, because they're all very similar.
Curbing, so yeah, they're all part of.
Sidewalks and
the-
planting strips.
Yes, that's all deviations from the cross-section.
Make a motion to grant a waiver for curbing, sidewalks, and planting strips.
Thank you,
Second.
thank you. It's a short discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Well done. Number 18.
19?
19.
19, yeah.
Final one, monuments. Granite monuments are required. As I mentioned earlier, we already have iron pins established to delineate the ends of the roadway. So we're proposing to, wherever we don't have monuments, we're proposing to just mimic what's there now and have iron pins in all locations versus granite monuments. So again, consistent with the surroundings.
Someone wanna make that motion?
I kinda like granite. Didn't we have something similar? What was it on, the villas or down there on Wedgewood where we had this big discussion where if a private way met a public way?
LaPlante,
The plant, yeah.
LaPlante,
will we-
we had the monuments, that's consistent, the monuments up there were consistent with what you see in the other subdivisions along that section of town. In this section of town, I don't know, I don't think you have a bunch of granite monuments down
No.
there, do you?
Not that we found.
Yeah.
Iron pins.
Iron pins.
If-
Gun barrels in some cases.
So it's,
I'm not making that up, that's real.
I mean, the heyday of this village was like 1865, so, I mean, yeah, no, I'm saying heyday, it was really 1850, 1865.
so it's historically correct to keep Manchog the same. Goes the way Manchog goes.
Yeah.
Bring that up, Bill. Bill.
So what is your pleasure on that one?
Make
So
a
you're
motion to
saying
grant.
ledge or, what's it? We just voted
The
on.
remainder of Snow Roam is
The
not,
plan, where the road met a public way.
Met
we made
McClellan.
them do granite.
we had them do concrete bounds, we didn't have them do granite, we had them do concrete bounds that mimics granite. And that was consistent with, as you go up the street, Strawberry and Knoll, that subdivision, those were concrete as well. Whereas here, they're not. There are some bounds, but only because Putnam Hill Road is a state roadway, so you
Right.
see,
That was the
Mass
nearest bound.
Highway
Mass Highway
bounds.
bound that we found is right here.
yeah,
But
you'll
anything else is either there's no monumentation or when there is, there are iron pins.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to grant the waiver for monuments and to use the iron pins consistent with the village.
I'll
Second.
Or actually gun barrels, can we have that instead?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, I have to do a quick review, because I have mine and I think we're missing one. So, 3C2K, 3C2K.
Oh, on your memo now.
Yes.
23rd.
Yeah, so 3C2K You did give me the grade, but, and do you have topography in the roadway, did you?
Existing topography?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
There's only a couple contours and they cross the road.
okay, so then
Very
we
hard to
don't
see.
need that one. Profiles, we did, area of closure, we did, utility and drainage system, so that's 3C2N. Okay, so you did not show utility or drainage system, so the drainage system we handled, but this requires, so 3C2N, it's a repeat of pieces of the other ones, but,
Exactly.
but you still need that one. So just to make sure it's clean. So section 3C2N requires you to show all utility and drainage
So we're talking
systems, and
about-
everything together. So drainage pipes, water, sewer, electric, telephone, all this stuff, some of which you can never show until National Grid shows up anyways.
Well, that's true.
But,
So we covered everything
You covered everything.
except for power.
right, which it goes where National Grid
So I
says
need
it
a motion for
goes.
that.
Yep, so 3C2N,
Make a motion, we
for
grant a waiver
utilities.
for 3C2N.
Need a second.
Second.
You on? Any discussion?
There's a power overhead.
It is.
3C2P.
All those
Didn't
in-
have underground utilities in 1860.
Didn't have utilities back then.
Didn't have utilities, period.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
And then can I just, you voted the waiver on stormwater in a different section, 4B. 3C2P is a repeat. It's the same thing, it's just in a different, one's in design. Do you have any objection for me under that waiver, vote for 4B for stormwater management? That I add section 3C2P, which is the other section that references stormwater?
Good idea.
That was a motion by you, Scott. 3C2P, so just add that to that waiver. Roadway cross section, and just making sure we got them all. 4A2K we
Vote that
did,
makes that motion? Make that
4A3.
addition?
I just asked him if he minded me adding it to the motion. You said no, right?
That's a good idea.
That's a
Good
good
idea,
idea,
okay.
and Mike Gagan, who made the second, thinks it's a good idea
Yes.
too, and
Yep.
nobody who voted on that has an objection?
Yes, okay, same.
So, all right, so let me see, 4A2K we got, 4A3 we got, 4A4. The grade you indicated, so we don't need it, 4A5B, 4A8, 4B, 4C, 4E, 4F3, 5G. What's 5F2? Yep, that's good. Curving, sidewalks, planting strips, iron pins.
Did you say the iron pins are not indicated, but he's changed that?
Yep, that's all
Yes,
set.
we have it.
All right, looks clean. In terms of waivers, obviously. Okay. All right, so now you have to decide if you want to close the hearing and continue to a different meeting, in which case you need to tell me what else you need before, or he has to do before the next meeting, or whether you wanna close the hearing, or vote, and then, actually, we usually vote and then close the hearing, I believe, so we can take input on any conditions. So, so you continue and tell them what you want, what you're missing, or you vote to deny, vote to approve with conditions, or vote to approve without conditions. You have minimum conditions should you choose to vote to approve with conditions. So, up to you.
I will make a motion, we vote to approve with the minimum conditions that, one, approval of all other applicable local, state, and federal departments, boards, and commissions. Two, prior to plan endorsement, all waivers and conditions of approval shall be noted on the plan sheets to be recorded. Three, prior to plan endorsement, in accordance with Mass General Law, the applicant shall provide a covenant that states the lot shall not be transferred until the construction of the roadway and any related site restoration is complete. As soon as the subdivision plan is recorded, an electronic file of the roadway and parcel line shall be provided to the assessor's office in form determined by them. 5, prior to commencement of construction, the applicant engineer shall submit 3 full-size sets of endorsed plans, 1 11 by 17 reduced set, and 1 electronic copy in PDF format to Sutton Planning Office. 6, prior to the commencement of construction, the applicant shall attend a pre-construction meeting with the planning department, applicable department representatives, and other bodies that have responsibilities relative to the site, as well as the site contractor and other personnel the applicant feels are appropriate. 7, prior to commencement of construction, the applicant shall post a road opening bond as they are impacting an existing public roadway. 8, construction shall be limited to Monday through Friday, 7 AM to 5 PM, and Saturday, 8 AM to noon. No local, state, or federal holidays. The applicant shall provide a minimum of 2 days' notice for a representative of the planning board to inspect sub-base, base course, and each top course layer, as well as the gravel section of the roadway. If there are costs involved, the applicant shall pay for the cost of these inspections. 10, during construction, the applicant shall ensure runoff, dirt, and other construction materials are contained to the construction area and shall clean up anything tracked into adjacent roadways at the end of every workday. 11, at the conclusion of roadway construction and prior to release of surety for the project, the applicant shall provide to the planning board an as-built plan and written certification from the applicant's project engineer that the road has been constructed in accordance with the approved plans. And 12, should new drainage issues arise during or after the roadway construction that affect the roadways in this area or the adjacent lots, the applicant shall correct them at their expense to the satisfaction of the planning board.
Good job.
Wow.
Brilliant. That's 12 conditions.
So if I could just ask a quick question procedurally?
Yes,
We need to add the waivers to the plan before the board will endorse them?
yes.
Is that what I heard? Okay.
Yeah, so you're gonna, this'll all be the approval letter, which has an appeal period.
Yep.
So during the appeal period, you'll be taking these, I'll give you them in a format that you can just add them to the plans, the waivers and the, approval conditions. You'll put them on the plans. After the appeal period runs, we'll schedule you back into a meeting. You'll come into that meeting, and we'll have a covenant that says you're not nobody's selling that lot until the roadway's done. They'll vote to endorse the covenant, put the covenant reference on the plan if it's not on there already. I honestly don't recall checking. And, the covenant, and then they'll endorse the plans, and the covenant and the plan will get recorded at the registry, and, there you have it.
Okay.
Actually, that's a good question. Will this get recorded at the registry? It's not laying out new meets and bounds. I'll have to check on that.
I assumed all along that it would.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Maybe it avoids some additional confusion in the future.
Yeah, strange. Yeah.
Probably should be on record.
Well, we got 20 days of appeal period to think about it, so.
Good planning. We have the motion with the conditions. Did we
Second.
get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Get a second for Wally, for the record. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. I need a motion to close this.
Take a motion to close the public hearing on this
Thank you, Scott.
snow
I'll second
road.
it.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Right.
Thank you all for coming back.
Thanks
How
for
we
your
do?
time. Appreciate it.
So
You
just
guys
give
did great.
your client a heads up that we will need to reconvene at some point in front of the selectmen. I'll talk with the town manager about the timing and the process on that.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
All right.
7:30, we have an aggregate earth removal permit closeout. It's 7:30, planning board time. We're working hard.
Fine.
Thank you for being patient.
No worries.
Have a good
There
There are
night.
19 waivers.
Yeah.
Jen, do you
You know?
have this up there?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty much all. You know what?
All right, so on this one, you need, this is the aggregate, what you have is the old aggregate the last aggregate earth removal plan.
Anyone
And-
who wants one, I brought them along for old school paper copies.
Sounds unstable.
Look at up close if you'd like.
And then you have the site visit report dated December 16th, 2019 from Graves Engineering.
Snow around.
So introduce yourself
I got one.
and,
You guys all have these things?
We have a little baby copy.
This slide.
I'm old school, these guys got.
Big crowds here. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, thank you for your time. My name's Jarrett Temple. I'm the Northeast Region Manager for Environmental and Land for Aggregate Industries. I'm here tonight to discuss our sand and gravel pit on Providence and Boston roads. It's about 388 acres. There's 36 parcels zoned about 4 different ways. Right now, the sand and gravel pit is not active. It's not currently being mined. We have no intention to mine it further. I actually let the earth removal permit expire this year. It is currently for sale. We have multiple offers on it that we're currently considering. All of these offers are for multiple use. So there's residential, there's industrial, light industrial, in those office park. So what we're here to ask is for a waiver on the remaining restoration on this site. Basically what's gonna happen is anyone who buys this property is going to completely destroy everything that we put back. Do we have
Electronic version of
Yeah.
these pictures? Yes?
Yeah, so on the 16th of December, we did a site walk. We contracted Graves Engineering. Jen accompanied, and the former quarry manager came along too. Now, Jen has intimate knowledge of this site more than I do. I've been with the company now for about 6 months, and the previous manager had known Jen for probably, 15 years?
Oh, wow.
Steve, yeah.
Steve, yeah.
So, as you can see in some of these photos, the site has been dormant for a while. We haven't done anything here in 5 years, I think, and even then, it wasn't really being mined regularly. It was just,
Taking stuff out of stockpiles and,
exactly right. And that's mainly, that is what remains there, are stockpiles of old materials, and just piles of earth. They just call it, because you don't know what it is. It's earth and there's growth over it. We have no idea what it is. So,
No whale.
now, the one concern is, there's a face that's open, and clearly some kids with dirt bikes have been taken advantage, and if I were a 15-year-old kid with a dirt bike, I'd be all over this too, so I get it. But it does, it does present a liability issue for us, so we're gonna figure out whether we, have somebody there, a few times a week. We have somebody who goes intermittently to check on the property. We've never caught anybody on the property with, hunting or riding dirt bikes around or anything like that. But this is the request that we have tonight, is to get a waiver for that remaining work.
all right. So you see in Graves's site visit report, they recommend, we were talking about open faces, kinda like this one, which is fairly steep. Granted, if anybody's on here, they're trespassing, but still, it's a potential liability. And you're the earth removal board, so you try to make sure you don't have potential liabilities on sites. So they recommend, that, non-stabilized areas need to be stabilized, preferably with topsoil and vegetative cover. There's some gullies, erosion gullies throughout. There was one area where, where we just, I don't know if we're below the water table or if we're just at a really low spot. I feel like we're below the water table there, but it is what it is.
But it shouldn't be, right?
How could they get below the
That's
water
not supposed to be.
Yeah, well, these things happen. So it might just be a low spot because you have a lot of grade going into that. You can see you go up pretty quickly all around this, so it could be like isolated land subject to flooding kind of situation.
Yeah, and it is noteworthy that just a few days prior to this site walk, we got a lot of rain.
We did.
And then it got really cold, and it froze up. So there's a number of places on the site, none that were this severe with ice, but
this is the area where I think I told you I was looking for a pond we filled in, and all of a sudden I was like in the middle of something, and I was like, swoosh, and I kind of like sunk into the ground. So we found that. I said, I want to see where that was, and this is where that was. And there wasn't surface water like this when I was there. It was just spongy, you know, it was just really spongy soil. So I was surprised actually to see surface water and kind of freezing. It's not very deep, you can see it was, you know, but yeah, so I don't know what was going on there. I can't tell you. But this is along the railroad, one side of the railroad line. The railroad's in that other side of that tree line. And this is in the heart of the parcel. This is quite a ways into the property. The open face, that if you look at your site plan, that's in the brown area right here on your site plan, that active excavation area for all the permits, that's on the edge of that. But it's a ways into the property.
And it's noteworthy that whoever develops the site is most likely going to use whatever reserves are left here.
They'll use it or they'll sell it.
They'll probably use it to mitigate costs, because they'll need roadways and they'll need to level things off. And not this particular site, but the one with all the frozen water, that's right where it's all zoned industrial. So that's where they want to.
This is prime development area right here, this part of the site.
Yeah.
So, up to you guys, what you wanna
So,
do with this, or if you
yes,
want some
yeah.
input, or.
First of all, besides myself, has any other board members been on that site?
That was years ago.
Well, yeah, maybe years ago.
I can suffice, if they needed to land the space shuttle there, I couldn't believe how big it was. It's not it's huge.
Yeah,
To think that amount of property with a railhead was incredible for lots of stuff. So for myself, ask other board members, I don't want anything to go wrong, and you own it, we don't, and I'd be on my motorcycle too, so, they're not thinking, and that's, as long as that's out and it's a gorilla
Right.
that's in the room, and I hope nothing happens there, but there are people there, it's for sale, so people are,
Correct. We have people-
investing, yeah, so I would expect that they're anxious to sell the property and move it off there.
Correct. We expect to have it sold by the end of this year. We're, like I said, we're about to accept an offer, we think, and we have a timeline to close by the end of the year. So there'll be a lot of activity on the site. You know, they'll be doing due diligence, doing, you know, environmental tests and things like that. So there'll be a lot of activity that once we are under contract, I don't think we're gonna see any more dirt bikes or anything like that. And actually, let me rephrase that, we haven't seen any, but we shouldn't see any evidence of them.
Well, let's ask other board members to think of it. It's 28 acres, it's 38 acres.
388.
388.
I'm sorry, 30, yeah. It's huge. It's, our job is to make sure that it gets managed appropriately and for the best use for the town, despite what you're gonna do personally. So that's what we're charged with, is to make sure that we,
So if you wanna take this is 2014, but not much has changed. So this is coming off Boston Road. You can see that slope we were just looking at is right there. So this is Boston Road, but you've gotta remember the scale is pretty decent here. So you're several hundred feet off Boston Road before you hit that exposed slope. And it's not this exposed anymore. This is 5 years ago.
What's it zoned as?
The zoning line, see the power lines?
Mm-hmm.
The office light industrial zoning comes to this side of that power line. From the power line this way is rural residential.
Okay.
So this is the discussion we had about whether we shift the zoning over to allow access to Boston Road through the office light industrial zoning. I did have a discussion with Central Mass Regional Planning and shared your request to them to help us evaluate potential traffic impacts from development of this parcel. And they are applying for a grant and have agreed to start helping us immediately on potentially assessing what we can develop in this area that won't mess up the light in particular and the traffic on 122A and Boston Road and the light at 146. So we're starting through that process already.
There's gotta be, again, residential?
Well, this
Little bit.
parcel's big enough to mix uses potentially, and as Jared mentioned, several of the development companies are thinking about a mix of uses, like some residential over here on Boston Road, maybe some multifamily, and then transitioning to maybe some lighter industrial in the middle of the site, and then right where you have the most access right here, this open area, that was where the water was ponding in here. That has significant amounts of area for, larger uses, like your Atlas boxes and your, we have to talk about, we've been talking about with, do you allow warehouse and distribution here? This is what all that traffic study is about, but large footprint buildings, whether they be warehouse and distribution or multi-tenant industrial uses. So you can see the site is, it's been mined significantly. These two ponds still exist. Those two ponds are still there. Every other, and those were wash ponds, so they're not certified wetlands, those ones. All the other wash ponds have been filled. These two ponds right here are duck pond and dog pond. Those are wetlands. Just these two little pockets right here. And that circle is the Wilkinson Well Water District Interim Wellhead Protection Area. There's also a Zone 2 on this site that contributes to that well that goes generally west from this circle and really conveniently covers a lot of that unscarred, very steep, if you lay in the contours, area that's not likely to be very widely utilized by any future development regardless. So that's cool. So the question is, I think, are you gonna make them flatten the hills that are left? Are you gonna make them put topsoil and seed when a developer will probably come along in the next year or 2 or 3 and just tear it all up? And or what do you wanna do?
It is most likely in the sooner part of that than the latter. The developers we're talking to have immediate plans. And, I mean,
To the applicant, I like the East Board, so everyone should tell you what they think. Go ahead. What do you think?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Personally, it's been, 5 years already, if they already plan selling in a year, and the developer's just gonna tear it all down anyway, I don't see a need to force them to. Their liability, and if they think it's not gonna be an issue.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, I guess what I'm reading here is Graves Engineering mentioned about doing some stabilization normally if you were keeping it ongoing.
correct.
But you're looking to sell it, so why do it for a short-term period? Again, it seems like you have acknowledged, the risk of not stabilizing it potentially, which is there, and you're aware of that, so I would tend to think that, it makes sense not to, I think I'd be in support of that, I think, yeah.
I would generally agree with the other two gentlemen, and also point out in the last 5 years, in the last year or two, the interest in 146 in this whole area has gone up dramatically. And from the first time, say, Agrip, just put this property out there. This is just a general observation.
You are correct.
Yeah, I'm only concerned about the liability, any town liability for this decision. So if there's excessively steep slopes, and I remember a slope in there that was about like that, and I think it was the town.
It's the town parcel.
Somebody goes in there and digs that out from down here. It's gonna
So,
slap down.
something on that.
They're afraid to get the gravel out because.
So right now, I'm working with Jim Smith, actually working on language right now for an easement. So, and we're gonna put that out to bid, and Aggregate and the town are gonna be partners on that. And so, what's the paper road that comes in there?
Hatchery.
Yeah, Hatchery Road. So Hatchery Road comes in and it curls around and picks up one of our access roads. So what they'll do is they'll dig out from Aggregate's side of the property.
You can see it right there. That's
Yeah.
the town sand pit
And that
right
is
there.
exactly the slope you're talking about though, and it
It
is
is.
But it is on the town side.
Yeah, you can see.
It's on the town.
So we're the most liable. Is that what
We
you're
don't have to
saying?
meet OSHA regs, but yeah, it's not a good situation.
Well, we're 60-40 partners, it's 60 in your town's favor.
I wouldn't wanna be the guy at the bottom of that, digging the dirt out.
Yeah, that dark
Well,
line is the base of slope, and
it's-
that is like
Story
this.
about that too.
Yeah, there's a guy under there, right?
He
town still
he
owns
got
that.
out by the skin of his
Well, I bet.
teeth.
I
The
bet.
town still owns that, right?
Correct.
I concur with Scott. I'm more interested in some ridiculously steep slopes of, it's an attractive nuisance.
It is, it's
what it
great,
is.
looks like a fun place to be.
Right.
Right?
Just
Just you
like-
charge admission.
Just like when we were kids.
Yeah.
I would say as long as there's no, slope that's, whatever it is, 2-to-1 or greater,
Should be toned down.
right, should be. And I don't care about the topsoil, cause
Yeah.
that's just I would think that'd
That's
be
just
just a
dressing,
waste,
yeah.
but,
Yeah, you do have, I mean, this slope over here, that's part of this hill. There's a pretty good slope there, and the slope over near the rail line, part of that is pretty steep. But in this area, I think that's the area I'm looking at. No, not
So
there.
your grave doesn't mention slope,
It doesn't.
slopes.
There's just, yeah, it's around the rail line, it's over here. There's just a few slopes in there that are pretty steep, but nothing compares to the town slope,
Right.
that's for sure. There's just two small sections that I can think of that have pretty good slopes to them, and I don't know what you do about it. I mean, you have to, I don't know how you pull those
I
down.
don't either, because if you look at the shape of them, it can't just,
Yeah,
it's hard to grade those.
Well, somebody's gonna have to, right?
Oh yeah, well, a developer will come in here and they're gonna tear it completely out. They're gonna pull all the material out and they're gonna make it nice, a nice base. That's what we do. We were them.
Any comments from the public? Nick?
You talked about the steepness on the town land.
Mhm.
A good part of the land, the gravel under the town land has been mined by BNT previous to aggregate
Mhm.
owning it. And the town also has been digging. Also, you got steep slopes on the property of Worcester Sand and Gravel where the the power line poles are there.
Mhm.
But I think you should go down and look at this before you say, we're not gonna do anything. It's, as Jen said, this is a big area, there's big slopes there, you really should look at it first.
This is a 2018 aerial. You can see it's not as wide open anymore. There has been some growth, but this is one of the areas with the slopes. And then you can see a lot of it's grown in. They've done a really, that just not using it has really revegetated and stabilized a lot of it. So you just have small areas, you can see them, where you've got, and like I said, right here against the lines, there's a few areas that are steep, and then back towards that front side. This, I don't remember there being a steep pile there, but I don't think there is. I think that's just scarred there, and it's just up front here near Boston Road, where you've got that, one of those piles from Jeff's photographs. The majority of the site is as you see it here. It's revegetated, or it's, it's still hills, but it's vegetated, so it's stabilized.
All the green on your maps show areas that we've already reclaimed.
Yeah.
It's already been restored.
Well, 'cause I wanna move on, this off the agenda if I can, and I'm hearing what you're saying there. Nick, I want, liability is critical. I think that, we have a responsibility to recognize that you have the right to sell it, and we want we need to partner, with you guys. There's something that we can partner a way to make sure that this is safe as the real estate moves forward. And if we should have, if we at least have a plan to do something, we can say we're doing something. But the real estate will be happening as this is going, so, maybe we should talk about it in a month or 2 months this winter, just to, look for getting into the spring and having how far you're moving along with the real estate moving, or if it's gonna be taking a while. I don't want us to be hang on the hook
Sure.
for another summer of breaking out the motorcycles. There's something going the wrong way. There's any things that you've seen in your experience, or things that we can do to just make this safer. So we're doing everything that protects us and you guys as this moves out of being a pit and gets sold.
So if I may, what will probably happen sooner than all of that is this project going out to bid that the town and aggregate are partners on. And Jim Smith has said he's already got 2 people run it like this. So that bid process will probably happen pretty quickly, and that'll start. And we're gonna give a certain amount of time for them, because we can't have that being taken out, 18 months from now while someone's waiting to develop it. That'd be a nightmare. So if they have, say 9 months to remove all that material, there is going to be a significant operation there, to the point where we'll need to have somebody there monitoring it. And it'll probably be a shared cost between the town and aggregate to have a person or perhaps multiple people there on site daily while that operation is happening. So again, with all that activity, I don't foresee the liability being that much of an issue. And believe me, we are, we have over 30 different sites. Liability is huge. Health and safety, environmental, that's what I do. So that's why we're not that concerned about that piece right now, or else it would be staffed. So we think this will happen probably in the next 60 days. I plan to have what I need to Jim Smith by the end of the week, and then he's gonna put it out to bid, he said, right after.
So February, March, you said, at the end of April, in May, let's get a report, just something informal. You don't have to be here for us, just to tell us what's going on.
So you don't wanna do a vote to close out, you wanna just kind of
So
wait
what does
and
that,
see?
what does this mean? What does that mean?
You're basically just letting him
Walk away?
walk away. Yeah, cause we're holding a bond.
How
The
much?
reason for the bond, there's multiple reasons for the bond, but the bond is usually to restore sites, to pull, to just make sure it's safe if he walked away, period. So he's asking for a closeout, and given the situation on this particular site, he's asking for you not to make him do what's typical, what's typical, as you can see it on this aerial, is that you put down some kind of soil so that stuff grows in it. If there's a slope left, or if it's flat, so that it's stable, really. It doesn't have to be necessarily pretty, but it's stable. And you can see from this aerial in particular, because it was taken when the vegetation was out instead of when it's not, that there's not a ton of the site, but there are a few patches on the site where it's just sand and gravel that nothing's growing in, or not, that they haven't tried to apply stuff to because it was stockpiles that they were pulling stuff from every now and again. So you just have to, the decision tonight is what you see there that's still left scarred, in effect. Do you want that, do you need that flattened out to some degree? Do you need that seeded to any degree? Or, what do you need done with that? Or, with impending sales and stuff, you just, it's your liability, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, if somebody gets hurt and somebody sues, they're not gonna stop with you. They're gonna sue everybody they can sue, including the town. But
So the bid that's going out is to remove that kind of material only on the town
the town,
Only on the shared.
area,
Right.
shared area?
Correct.
this one right there.
What if we give like a, 6-month time frame to take down the slopes?
Yeah, to the town, and you guys extended your contract to pull down the stuff that we go and look at.
If it's gonna be developed in 6 months or 9 months, but if it's not,
Should we go look at this?
And that's what I would propose. For aggregate side, we would rather know sooner than later. If we have to do the work, we're gonna get to it. Because, like I said, it's for sale, and if we have to do it, then anyone who's buying this, they're gonna wanna see something from the town saying that,
Right.
all, site reclamation's been done. All restoration is complete, and then they know that they don't have any,
Liability
liability when
themselves
they
coming
buy
in.
the property, that they gotta do all this work, and it's a cost they didn't come up with.
Aggregate has, when we took on, this board's responsibilities, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now?
I think 5, I think, yeah.
5 years ago, so it was all new for us. I know from my recollection, Aggregate was very clear that they can't imagine business coming back to be
To use that site.
operating. We're just downsiding and you've done some tremendous reclamation, huge acres. So you've been doing your job, and you're right, at the end, it was supposed to be completely reclaimed, but, it's a business, engine that's gonna change now, so it's time to, if someone comes and buys it as is, they're gonna take on these responsibilities, the people that buy it, so, and they've been a good neighbor and good to have in town, but maybe I think what Bill's saying is, we need to be in the loop as to what's going on, because if things aren't happening 6 months from now, and nothing's gonna be happening, well, then maybe you better get working on it, and it's only gonna put the price up for you guys to sell it. If we're gonna have to fix it, you're gonna just pass on to whoever's buying it, so they know, they need to also know that, the people that are suing you, that there's a price that you have, and if you're gonna have to fix everything and reclaim it, you're gonna have to do it, you're gonna have to pay more to do all that stuff, so.
So you wanna go out there, Bill, is that what I'm hearing? You wanna go out there and look at potential, the front Boston Road area is where that mound was.
Yep.
And then
I'd like-
out coming in from the other side,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, drive
area
by.
near the rail
I drive by it every day.
was,
I'd like to
You
go,
won't
s-
be-
I'd
you
like to
won't
go
believe what you
see
see
it.
over there, yeah.
It's
You gonna
fun.
provide the motorcycles?
You don't have one of those fat bicycles with the fat tires that you.
it's so much bigger than you think when you get on there, it's like,
Like like any other item that comes in. You heard the snow road / street? Oh, I've been down there twice to look at that.
haven't seen
That's
it?
what, 20,000 square feet?
Yeah.
It's not
So we can-
400
Yeah, I'll go
acres.
I'd like to.
I like the idea. I think it's fair that you guys should put your eyes on it. The pictures don't do it justice. Certainly from the top down, it's almost impossible to see what
Yeah,
I'm talking
you
about.
don't get the, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll see this, just the scope of the property. I mean, we've spent millions already in restorations. You can see all those green spots, so you'll get an idea. It's just how long that's been there.
so let's try to organize, we just need, we can walk in, as long as you know we're out there and we're properly attired.
Yeah.
Which is what?
Which is why,
What do we have to wear?
Hunting vests
In boots.
High
and
vis.
boots and whatever scares away bears. So, there's some pretty good, interesting piles of scat out there that ain't a deer, let's just say that.
And Jim's aware that we've had this discussion, so Jim knows that the town, we need to do something with our stuff too.
Do you wanna try to get on the site and then come back here at the next meeting and decide what you want them to do or not do?
yeah.
That would be great, if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't wanna drag this on.
Okay, so we have a meeting in 2 weeks, right? February something.
There's no snow.
February
10th, I think.
Is it always a Monday night?
Yeah,
Always a Monday.
Yes.
every other week generally.
Every other week.
Yeah, I think February 10, so you might have
You got the schedule.
Well, I got the schedule right here. February 10.
February 10. So,
One after that's 24.
and then we can just,
You don't
you
have to
guys
be
can
there.
just
As
let me
long
know
as you
your
tell us we're
availability.
going down and look
And
on
we
it.
can, if we need multiple visits, cause we often do, cause everybody's on different schedules, we can do that. Set up a few days. I can let you know when we're out there if there's any reason you wanna be out there with them.
And you can get a truck. If anyone has a
Yep.
pickup truck, you can get on, and you can see everything that you need to see from the main thoroughfares on the property. You're not gonna have
Right.
to get out and hike anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
And
there's
you
a
can-
ravine area, but I don't think you need to really fill in the ravines so much. I think you just really wanna make sure you're pulling down the slopes.
So you know the access points.
Mhm.
If you
Yes,
need a key to the front, I can drop it off, otherwise you know how to get in.
yeah.
Okay, Okay.
No,
good.
I don't.
Okay.
2 weeks.
I have no idea.
That's great.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for your time.
Keep
Thank
it
you.
early on the agenda this time. All right, now we'll go, are they first?
I don't think we have anything scheduled yet,
Yeah.
I'll have to look.
So you can be first. Be on your way.
February 10, I'll put you in the 7 and 10 slot.
All right.
First thing, all right?
Great, thank you.
Aggregate, closeout.
We've got to,
Make a
Okay.
motion.
No, so we're not doing any motions on this one. So we'll just reconvene on February 10th,
right,
and then we'll try, if you guys can give me your availability in the next week
Yep.
or two,
Okay.
then we can set up some group visits, 1 or 2 group visits, if you wanna go out there and check it out.
thank you. All right.
Okay, cool.
Next, 7:45, Worcester.
Ah.
Sand and gravel.
All right,
Oh.
this is a permit renewal.
7:45. Planning board time, thank you.
We always
And
say
the,
planning board time.
You guys have copies of
the crowds are all here waiting, they're at home watching, waiting for the good stuff, the big ending. Thank you for coming in.
I feel like we walked through a warrant since you guys added up,
Yeah.
you guys saw everything. Talked about it, yes.
You're, for your aware, we did have an earth removal board.
You're not, yeah, just.
And when all that stuff stopped, we had a board, but there was nothing on the agenda for probably 10 years, and that was why they asked.
Not
the
much.
Planning board, if you could come on and just take on the responsibility, so we, of course, we said yes, but then we had to learn about, all this stuff. I didn't know a thing, so I went and walked down to look at it and see what you guys do, so only a glimpse into what's going on. So for other board members, if they haven't been on your property, you can, introduce yourselves, tell them where you are and what the plans are.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
So we came into this in the last couple of weeks on Tie and Bond. My name's Todd Curtin. It's Mike Devato with me from Tie and Bond. The Worcester Sand and Gravel doesn't have a rep here tonight. He's at another meeting. So, and similar to previous discussion, I think Jen could tell us a lot more about this site than we could ever tell you.
I helped him find a well, though.
Yeah, she
Booyah.
did. She did. So, our first time on the site was this past Monday, and Jen and Mike went out on Wednesday. Really, all it was is previous engineer was Worcester Sand and Gravel was no longer available to do this work, to continue the permit. And so we were working with Worcester Sand and Gravel on something else in another town. So he asked us just to help him reapply, I guess, for the continuation of his existing permit. Similar to at least the last 3 years. I do not know the history as far as when they were mining this or taking materials out of here, but from my understanding, reclamation areas are all 3 years or older. So no reclamation has been ongoing for the last 3 years. And really, all he is looking to do, or Worcester Sand and Gravel is looking to do, is just to keep the permit alive. No materials to come out this year, and with that said, no reclamation work planned as well, because it's just not needed. Beyond that, I think Jen was just asking because everything we did was based on, we didn't actually get the CAD drawing file, so we digitized everything we had there. For previous submittals, we had 2 years that we had given to us, 2017 and 19. We based this off the 2019 plan as far as showing the area for, I guess, what was last live, at least, and how the contours would be if they were gonna do anything in 2020. And I think, Jen, you had picked up and sent the message to Mike about this should have been, I think, in light color. That's an existing contour. That's not meant to be shown as a proposed contour if anything were to happen. But again, so it's a strange concept to keep talking about something that's not gonna happen this year, as far as just keeping the permit alive. I can't speak to why he's looking to do that, other than keeping just options open, I guess, yes.
Options, yeah. So like Aggregate, Mike Trotta, from Worcester Sand, they're certainly considering whether sale is a better option for them as well, because the market is hot. And this is adjacent to a significant parcel that's on the active market. So, but he's made the decision that he'd like to keep this option open, keep this permit, active, because you never know when an, active permit has value to a potential buyer. So, so he keeps his options open. It's, Agrit had the opportunity to do the same thing, and they said, no, you know what, we're gonna let that lapse and just go the development route, so. But Mike's decided he'd like to have this option, so.
So when you went on the property, obviously, there is no mining,
Correct.
no piles of, stumps of trees, or no one's on the property doing things they're not supposed to be, because that's something.
That was all cleaned up.
Yeah, there's nothing going on.
That was
and all
before.
someone knows there's something that isn't getting used, and that's important, our job as a board is to make sure that there's nothing, going on the property, so keep it good. If you're gonna be, in charge of managing it, again, we need to look at it, and know what's there to make sure everything's, reclaiming, I guess, while we're waiting. I don't remember anything steep there.
There are some steep areas, but most of what's steep is vegetating naturally without even trying. There are a few areas that are steep, but not steep like Town Sandput's steep, and not even steep like some of the aggregate hills. So, yeah, there's not the same, there are exposed surfaces here, but they're pretty gradual for the most part, the exposed ones. There are, and you can, well, if you really look at if we're still doing this next year, you're gonna give me better colors. But the existing grade lines are those super light white ones.
Yeah.
So you can see there are stockpiles, there are slopes, especially along the edges of this property, there are. But most of those are vegetated and makes monitoring well reading's just tons of fun. Because you have to go
So when you-
through the pricker bushes down the steep hills.
So when you keep it well, with the permit, then that means you gotta go find the wells and make sure all those reports about where the ground water and all the other, if there's,
I know, yeah, that image too,
even
that had
mentioned
the,
Sutton.
the 2018,
Mhm.
it did show up how much it's growing in.
Yeah, on the aerial,
Yes.
yes, yeah.
So keeping this permit alive isn't for free, obviously, someone's gonna have to do that job, and we have to do our job, go down and, be the
Get on hand
stewards, if
things.
you will, in a different business than it was 15, 20 years ago, and I don't think it's gonna change.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well,
Any other
that's
board
their
members
site.
wanna weigh in, or?
This is the Worcester Sand and Gravel site right here. You can see, most of theirs is grown in except for the haul roads and some very minor areas. So when you come off Hatchery, you pull right into this area. So you have exposed slopes, but they're not slopes, they're very gradual. There are steep areas just off these edges,
On the east
but they're
side, yeah.
vegetated for the most part. And that is gloriously where the monitoring wells are, in the thickets. So, which is why it was so hard for them to find that last well. But I remembered which thicket it was in,
Yeah.
so.
So we see
So,
Any other
in
board
the thicket
members?
over here, so.
Yeah, power line, right, yeah.
that the written counsel has
So,
sent
yeah.
to us.
So not the same level of exposure you see on the aggregate site. But they're gonna continue their permit, so we're not closing out anything here. Just continuing with the same active project area, and like you said, kinda just keeping an eye on the site, making sure nothing's going on that's not supposed to be. There were stumps, there were construction materials, the little shed's now gone. There's a few things still in that area, but nothing like beams and stuff, old beams, same wood logs.
There's still a gate, you can't get on there without the gate.
Technically, yep, yeah.
Wasn't hard to visit.
Well, the
But-
gate, yeah, sometimes it's open, sometimes it's closed,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a big property, like attached to a big property, so.
So
Lot of-
is that gate associated with the well, or is that?
The gate is
Attached.
threefold. It's for Worcester Sand,
Yeah.
it's for the town gravel pit to keep people out,
Yeah.
of the town gravel pit area, and it's to restrict access to some degree to the water district's wellheads, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has three purposes. When we were there the other day and it was open, it's the first time I've seen it freely open in a long time. We've definitely had some issues with whose lock is on there and how it's locked and having to cut it off and having issues, so that might have to do a little bit with why it was open the other day, but no, it's generally locked. The Hatchery Road gate is generally locked.
And that's doable and lockable, and
Mhm.
certain people should have
Like,
access.
yeah, Worcester
And
Sand.
other people shouldn't be.
Mhm.
And have to lock when they leave.
Mhm. So just asking for a renewal. So I did give you some.
Can you put the bond up? Can you
Yes.
put that up on the screen?
Absolutely. So this is the current surety bonds.
The last paragraph is the one may need some clarification in my mind.
Yeah, I can tell you it's just the same rider. No, I don't love that paragraph.
It says that the bond can be canceled by the people who issued it if they send us a letter.
Yeah, and if they send us a letter, then we're going to call Worcester Sand and go, if you're doing anything, you need to stop doing it, and you need to get us a new bond right away. So, it's not an unusual term, this is the same exact rider that's been in the
It
file.
should be the other way around, but.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they decide they're a bad risk or but they have to tell,
So we get a written
Us.
note, cancellation notice, and then we call and say they gotta straighten that out.
yes.
Or what? We don't have any money.
Or they're ceased, you know. I mean, we don't have any money to restore, but.
So the hedge fund's gone?
That's the whole point of this thing. This is how it's been before, this is the same language?
It's the same rider, yeah. I mean, I could certainly look into it. Not a problem. Happy to look into it.
Switch it in.
Yeah.
Flip it.
I'd rather see the notice going the other way. You need the money, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have a problem. No, it shouldn't be on their part, it should be town.
Mhm. Why cancel, leave us hanging? All right, so you gotta decide what you wanna do. Do you
Wait for that
want,
clarification?
huh?
Wait for that clarification.
Would like that clarification?
Well, it could be reversed, it'll be fine, and that's what we should be doing, right?
Sure.
The cart and the horse should be in the right
In the right
spots.
stable, right, or
Yeah, yeah.
in the front, not the back?
All right, yeah.
The one thing we don't have with these earth removal bonds that we have with every other bond the planning board oversees is the surety agreement. So it doesn't matter what, to some degree, to a large degree, it doesn't even matter what the language is in the riders or the paper bonds that come, because the surety agreement says what your obligation is. And it's a recorded surety agreement that's enforceable. So, we may wanna just do a surety agreement as well, and then ask for an adjustment in that wording. It's Utica. But there's a local insurance agent, I'm sure, that
Yes.
Worcester Sand and Gravel is dealing with to get this bond issued.
Yeah, it's
So-
not very definitive, but I guess that's what the permit's about. The permit defines what should be done,
Yep.
that they're insuring.
Yeah, and like you said, we took these on just in the current form they're in from the earth removal board. We didn't change really anything. So,
Now we're in charge, right?
yes,
We're
but
slow
now
learners,
you're in
but
charge.
Yeah, we're taking a while.
Getting there.
We'll take down how long.
Yeah.
Now you're in charge, so you can do more what you do for the planning board if you want. You can have a separate surety agreement that Worcester Sand signs that says, this is what this bond is covering, and this is what will happen. If the bond, if the bond is in breach, like if these guys call the bond, this is what has to happen, and
Well, I remember tri-party agreements, and the people that got nothing out of those was the town of Sutton. That's what I remember,
yeah. But we've done good since then.
right? Remember those?
Anymore, yeah. we don't-
Oh, we still do, we just
Not
watch who we
easily.
do them with.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
We haven't won yet.
Haven't won yet.
We've won some insurance bonds, though, plenty, and that's what this is.
Okay.
So you want me to look into that provision and schedule them for February 10?
Just a quick clarification, they may have a good reason why it's written that way or whatever, but
Okay.
doesn't seem right.
But
to me.
otherwise, do you need anything from these engineers on the plan? I did ask for some revisions on the table and stuff, they made all those revisions. You can fix the black line on 400 to a white line.
Yep.
So that it's clear the intent isn't to have a plateau in the middle of the
Right.
finish area. That'd be good. If you want, we can look at the site as well, if we're out on the aggregate site, so you can
Might
see
as
the
well.
difference.
We should do it over,
Might
yeah,
as well, we're there.
we'll be right there with your permission.
It's on those prints too that you were talking about, if they're bare or whatever it was, but yes.
Mhm.
And we'll get smarter.
Yes.
Ooh.
Everybody wanna move it on the next, in 2 weeks?
Go right after, we'll flip you. Oh no, you're gonna tail them too.
Yeah.
But you'll be earlier,
Yeah, right.
technically,
Yeah, we'll be
Yeah,
the
we-
first, do the first 2 things on our agenda, I
I'd say,
apologize for
yeah,
that.
we can-
7:25, so
Yeah.
then if we could do 15 minutes for the other one, then
Right.
they'd be at 7:25.
If everything goes smoothly, we should be fine, we should be home.
Yeah, well, they don't really have site issues, it's more just dealing with the insurance
Yeah.
Yeah.
issue.
Great.
So if you can ask Mike who his insurance agent is, and have him get me that information, then I can have a conversation with them.
Okay.
And assume we can be fixed in 2 weeks. Tell him, if it shouldn't be in 2 weeks, let us know, but you should be able to tell him, fix it in 2 weeks. All right?
Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
thanks for
thank
coming in.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right. All right, so that one's,
We gotta sign before.
yeah, you got some
Something else
stuff to
to sign
sign.
Motion to close the meeting now?
Motion to close the meeting, yeah.
Motion to close the meeting?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.